All right, welcome to tonight's presentation. This is going to be a relatively short run through of everything you should be doing to prepare for the upcoming school year, both in terms of college applications, essays, financial aid, scholarships, you name it. That's what's on tap for tonight. I'm Andy Lockwood. This is the lovely Pearl Lockwood.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Pearl.
Hello, Andy. Hi, everybody.
And we're from Lockwood College Prep. Long story behind the name, but we don't have time for that. So welcome. Let us know that you can see and hear us okay before we get into the content, as we in the biz call it. So you're letting people know what to do if it freezes or whatever. Sure. Yeah. So a little sensitive about the tech issues, but things seem to work pretty well with this platform. We've been using it for like 7 years or something. So we haven't really done a webinar in a few months. We've had a pretty busy summer, a couple of vacations, Ireland and Cape Cod, not the Irish Riviera part of Cape Cod. And I suspect that a lot of you guys are like us. You had a little bit of a summer off, but here it is August, and we have a rising high school senior also, class of 2023. I think we both feel like, okay, it's back to reality. It's August.
Yeah.
It's crunch time.
That's August. It's in the face.
Yep.
August.
Comes in like a lion and leaves like a lion, because that's not the same. It's March or something. Yeah. Leaves like a lamb.
That's a great one.
Butchered that one. So we're going to be going over, a lot of information that I feel that you won't get from your college night or your guidance counselor or whatever they call their presentation. Mm-hmm. This is based on a lot of mistakes that we see people making, really mistakes of omission, things exactly. that they don't do, right?
Yep.
And we've been in the college advising field for more than 20 years at this point, and we've, every time I say we've seen it all, then something comes along that we haven't quite seen before. Yeah. But I feel like we've seen 99% of it.
Honestly, I'm going to actually interject. This is not part of the presentation, but even as to when high schools plan the timing of these financial aid nights or these college planning nights, they are fairly deep into the fall of the senior year, or even sometimes later, well after priority financial aid deadlines. And the second peeve I sort of have about these high school planned college evenings, besides the timing, they often are, it's like a half bit of information, because there's typically a local college representative from a school that typically, it has been my experience, is one that requires only the Fafsa and not the CSS Profile. So that representative typically doesn't even say a peep about the CSS Profile, a form that is required by about 700 schools at this point now, by the way. It's gone up from 400. Right. And many, if not most of the schools your student is going to be interested in applying.
Why didn't anyone tell me?
Anyway, just to kick things off, talking about omissions.
Wow, I'm glad I tuned in, because I thought it was about 400, not 700.
I think it's increased. I've actually recently gotten some numbers on that. Mm-hmm.
Investigative reporter Pearl Lockwood. Mm-hmm. She also does traffic and weather.
Yeah.
So you kind of look like you had that news anchor look with the hair, and you look very official. So so we're going to explain what what those terms mean: FAFSA, CSS Profile. Pearl's point is that you at these college nights, the timing is usually off. The information is at best helpful but incomplete, and sometimes it's flat out wrong. Yeah. I've heard all kinds of stories. I'll try to come up with a few tonight in case you hear them. So anyway, so who is here with us? Let's see, and say hi in the chat. Let us know that where you're from.
Gabrielle from Northampton.
Oh, that Gabrielle. Kidding. Steve from Smithtown, Nadia from Roslyn. That's next door to us.
Pamela from Syosset.
Yeah, almost next door.
Christine from Central Florida.
Good.
Hi, everybody.
Pearl Lockwood's here.
She is.
And Adrian Katz from Plainview. Yeah. All right, good.
Nice to see you.
So we've got a couple of different states, a couple of different villages. Yeah. Sometimes we get people, from different countries, and let us know. We're always curious. All right, so let's get right into it, because we want to try to keep this to an hour, although I think that's so forearmed is forewarned. or however that saying goes. And this is going to be helpful for you no matter what stage of the process you're at. So let's talk about in order to do the financial aid applications, which I'll just say briefly, there's the Fafsa, which is the main application that every college takes. It's the federal form. And then there's this other form, the CSS Profile. But you need the same basic types of financial documents to do each application, depending on what your colleges require. So what are those financial documents or financial information that you're going to need for this 2023?
For this upcoming year, which is considered the 23-24 academic school year, the operative tax return that you are to use for the financial aid forms is the 2021 tax return. You'll need your federal 2021 tax return as well as all 2021 W-2s that have been received by both parents as well as the student. If the student files a tax return, okay, and a lot of times I get, well, he or she or they earned some money, but it wasn't enough. They didn't have to file a tax return. Am I in trouble? Or typically students have an income that falls in a pretty discretionary place from a tax standpoint. But as I would always recommend, you ask your CPA or your tax professional what they would recommend as to your student filing the tax return. But if your student filed a 21 tax return, then you will need it to provide the information on the financial aid forms. If your student did not file a 2021 tax return, but earned income nonetheless, it doesn't get disregarded. You still need that information. You still need, if they received a W-2, that W-2. If they didn't receive a W-2, but they still earned, you're going to have that information. It doesn't mean you put a zero in.
Even if you think it's de minimis, as we used to say when we practiced law,
yes,
you still put it in.
Exactly. The other thing
Can I compliment you on your use of they pronoun?
Sure.
Is that for Gab in Northampton?
It's for everybody and all inclusive, and I want everyone to feel welcome.
Pronouns, very big on the Common App this year, very big on the FAFSA this year. It's the year of the pronoun.
Yes. Okay, and the other information you're going to need from a financial aid standpoint for these financial aid forms at your fingertips are your account balances. Okay. Clearly, as we all know, because if we watch what's happening in the investment world these days, things change moment by moment. So clearly, the intention is that you're giving a good faith estimate of your various assets, your cash, savings, checking, stocks, bonds, CDs, 529 plans, trusts, name it. I mean, I'm sure I've left out some mutual funds, money market, your retirement assets. Did she say retirement assets? I thought that the retirement assets are supposed to be excluded on the FAFSA. So she doesn't know what she's talking about. Okay.
Both sides of the dialogue for Lockwood.
I'm trying to keep it interesting.
It is.
Okay. So that's true. Retirement assets are not part of the FAFSA form. However, if you are going to be applying to a school that requires the CSS profile, the CSS profile has many additional questions that are not covered on the FAFSA. And yes, you do have to provide the information if your student is applying to such a school. And that would include your retirement assets, the value of your house, also not something that should be put on your FAFSA. But these are things that come up also on the CSS profile. So you're going to have this information. You're going to have to know the value of your house. You're going to have to know how much is owed on it. You're going to have to know the purchase price. Okay, so you need to have a very good handle before you start to do the forms of what you've got and where you've got it. Okay. Was that just a breath, or did you have something you wanted to ask?
Thank you for pausing.
Okay.
No, so the point is that there's the more information you can gather up front, the better. And I will say that when Pearl does this for our clients, we have we try to keep it short enough so it's workable, but long enough so it's comprehensive. But we spend a lot of time, and we've done this as a firm over the years, on trying to perfect our intake. So if you're going to do these financial aid applications yourself, which most people do, we're not here to convince you to do that otherwise if you're a do-it-yourselfer. But the better you do upfront and gather that information, the easier time, quote unquote, easier time you'll have. Don't underestimate the amount of time it takes to get all this stuff together. It's probably gonna take a couple of weekends to do these forms correctly and really understand them. And then you just kind of demonstrated, you're just scratching the surface of demonstrating what you need to gather together.
Right, because the other reason, and again, I don't want to go too far into this. It's not the purview of this particular webinar, yeah. But the other reason you want to get a handle on what you have and where you have it is if there's an opportunity for you to improve your eligibility before you file, you want to have an idea of really what you have and what does that even mean? How can I even improve my eligibility? Really, can I actually legally and ethically take what I have that may be causing me to lose out on financial aid eligibility and put it someplace else? Yes. Yes. So we
will talk about that.
We will.
That's to come after weather and sports.
All right. All right. So the other thing you're going to have.
So may I just jump in? So just doing these forms is kind of hard also. If you look at them, if you printed one out and you glance at it, you would think, maybe not. It depends on your level of comfort. But what about like I always hear about you having problems with the logins, accessing the site, passwords, whatever. So talk. Well, it's different for her because she does 400 something families worth of forms each year. But if you're gonna do it yourself,
right?
What's the deal? So with logins?
Here are some pitfalls that can happen. Every student is going to have to get their own FSA ID by going to the studentaid.gov site. But that FSA ID username and password connected to that student must be filled out with that student's cell phone and email. The parent should resist any temptation for putting the parent's cell phone and email in because they want to help their student out by being on top of it and in charge. But this is the student is the applicant. The problem that generous parent is going to have is when the parent also needs an FSA ID. And the FSA ID of the parent must be totally distinct, email and cell phone wise from the students. That's number 1, 2, and 10. The College Board login, which is the login one needs to sign up for, register to take an SAT. That is the same login that one uses to access the CSS profile. There have been changes. At this point, perhaps your students have logged in because they're current 2023 students. If you haven't logged into the College Board site, I suggest that you do so soon. I believe I just did that.
Okay.
Did you catch my segue?
Okay.
Okay.
We talked about doing that differently in the production meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right
ahead. Just in terms of the logins, there's all sorts of scary, like you can't share this with anyone. What the government is really concerned with is people stealing identities, logging in, borrowing a whole bunch of money in your name, putting unbeknownst to you, putting it in their bank account and trotting away scot-free.
Yeah.
So that's why there are all these super hyper protective passwords and procedures. But I think what the effect is that it makes it a lot harder for parents and for kids, because parents aren't even supposed to access their kids' information. Like it's really bizarre. Like
here's the other site. Even FSA ID logins and scary criminal language aside, the Fafsa, the Department of Education website, unfortunately, is extraordinarily dated from a technological standpoint, which means it cannot handle much traffic. It certainly cannot handle the traffic that it actually has every single year. So that causes...
how long? I remember I read that article last year. It's based on technology from
the 40s or the 50s or something
like 40 years ago or 30 years ago.
40,
in the
right,
70s.
Not 40s.
Yeah. It's based on technology from the 70s.
Right. And it can be very painstaking. You may have to hit continue on the same page 6 different times where you would think you're going crazy and you think that something is wrong, but that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
You're going to patience is a virtue this year.
Yeah, Pearl is a very patient person. Just ask God. Okay, so now, because I just want to point that out. So now can we talk about when to file and what to file?
Okay, so first I'm going to say, what should you file? Well, when you've gathered your list of schools, hopefully you're a very balanced list of schools with an appropriate amount of, I don't even want to use the word safe anymore, but appropriate or target, sure bets, reach schools, targets, and safety schools. You need an appropriate balance of those three things. When you have your complete list, each school on your list is going to have its required financial aid forms. It either will require the Fafsa alone, or it will require the Fafsa and the CSS profile, and each school has a prerogative, and many do have their own independent institutional form as well that it expects you to file. Now,
Princeton, Penn.
Right, Princeton, Penn, there's a couple others. They have their own on top of these forms that they also require you to file. So the first thing I'm going to tell you off the bat, make sure 1, 2, or all 3 of these forms are consistent with one another. Mm-hmm. You don't want to have financial entries, let's say, of your assets that indicates one thing on one of these forms, and the same corresponding field on another form is a different number. That is going to raise the proverbial red flag, bring lots of unwanted attention to your application, and that's not the kind of attention you want. Okay, so because typically that kind of scrutiny begets more scrutiny, and it typically does not render a better rather than worse financial aid package for the student. Anywho, so try to keep everything consistent.
We took a closer look at your applications, and we're going to give you more money instead of no financial aid office ever.
Right. So important to keep things consistent, important to know what your school requires. Now, when is it required? So it depends on the student's application status. If the student is applying early decision, that's going to dictate one date, not only for application deadline, but an independent date for that priority financial aid deadline for that early decision applicant.
Let me clarify.
Okay.
So there's applications for admission deadlines,
yes,
and then there's financial aid deadlines.
Right.
And the financial aid deadlines vary. That's one of the ways they vary. Mm-hmm. But you've got to look it up for each of your schools.
Right. And where's the best place to find it? On the school's website itself. I'll just point out another thing. Another big distinction between the application for admission versus the application for financial aid. Applications for admissions and those deadlines, you have to be on or before that deadline. You cannot be late. If you are late, forget about applying for that application time period. You've blown your chance. Conversely, though, the financial aid application deadlines, you don't want to be late either, and you don't want to blow the deadlines. You certainly want, because you want to make sure every duck is in a row and that you have put your best foot forward regarding every part of the application process. So if it turns out that you included a school and you, lo and behold, are past that financial aid deadline, is all lost? Should you not bother submitting the financial aid deadline to that school? No. You can submit it. You'll submit it. It will, in all likelihood, be given its full consideration, and you will be given the regular financial aid package and award that you would have gotten had you been on time, probably. But the risk, maybe.
I'm going to say maybe.
Maybe. They certainly can hold their hat on you being late,
yes,
and we don't want to ever give a school that kind of ability against you. However, different than the admissions deadline, if you submit it late, it is likely or maybe they will still consider it. You just may risk losing out on some of the money to be had.
So what I'm hearing from you, just to rephrase, is everything is due October 1st.
No, everything is not due October 1st. The financial aid forms that are required for the 23-24 school year
FAFSA
become available
on
October 1st.
The Pfizer
and the CSS Profile. What do they both do?
The Pfizer.
The Fafsa will let you know what your eligibility is for federal aid at that school. And the CSS profile will determine if it's a school that requires the CSS profile. It's indicating to you that it is a school that has institutional aid available to award. So a school
May I translate?
Yes.
Okay. So the Fafsa, free application for federal student aid, Fafsa, not FASFA, FASA, Pfizer, Fauci, no, sorry. That is a form that you fill out. You don't get money from FAFSA. You don't. So when people say, I didn't get any money from FAFSA,
yeah, it's not an
like,
orifice
nope.
or a bank.
You don't get money from a 1040, right? That's your tax return. You don't get money from a FAFSA. You just file it. The college decides, based on their resources, based on how your kid stacks up compared to your competitors.
And their own analysis, which is independent from other schools.
Yeah. Okay. The college decides how to allocate its funds to you, not to you, partially to you, etc. The FAFSA is a federal form, and most people that we work with who are not super low income, unless they're self-employed and they write off a lot of their income, but most people do not get federal money because you have to have income of sub $50,000 for them. This is a gross oversimplification to get money from the federal government, where a lot of clients, we tend to attract upper middle class, mass affluent, high income families. They get money mostly from the college endowments. And there's a lot of money to be gotten. And part of that getting is by filing these financial aid forms. And don't do them late, don't saying.
Just fill it out right now. Well, if you do, you will be completing the FAFSA for the year that's going to begin in 3 weeks from now, because the only ones that are available right now are for the 22-23 school year, which is beginning in a few weeks from now.
For a class of 22 kids. So you'd be filing way past the priority deadline.
You'd be filing really, really late for this coming year that's in a few days, and you would not be doing anything for your student who's graduating in 2023.
Right. Pearl filed that one for everybody November, December, January, February. Not
yeah. Right.
But the one for class of 2023 that comes out in October, and the due dates will vary. The earliest I've seen is if you go, we'll see this year, if you go early decision to North Carolina, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
October 15th.
Yeah. So it depends.
That's unusual.
Yeah.
More typically, the earliest is typically November 1st, and then in increments of 15 days from there, varying, through the schools.
Yeah, sometimes it's like the early early action application deadline for North Carolina is October 15th.
Right.
But the priority deadline is March 1st.
Right. And
so you have to look at all these different.
It may take quite a few clicks on a school site to see these different deadlines.
So I know I just gave conflicting scenarios, but we'll see what happens when everything comes out in a few weeks.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
Anything else on the applications? There's no universal deadline to file.
Right. Okay. So maybe somebody said, "Oh, I make too much money. I'm not even going to bother. Why should I? I'm not need-based eligible. I'm not going to get anything." Okay. Why else would you file a financial aid form? One, some schools, believe it or not, if you want your student to be in the running for merit aid, some schools require that you file financial aid forms as a prerequisite for merit aid consideration. So that's a big reason you want to file the forms.
It's not every school, but around here, NYU,
enough popular named schools that it's worth your while just to do so to cover your bases. When in doubt, just file it, cover yourself. The other thing is, if you do have a lot of financial strength, your financial strength can be demonstrated by filing these financial aid forms as a signal to these schools that you are a family of financial strength, which could prove an admissions asset for that applicant. So you may have a different strategic purpose here in submitting financial aid forms.
So just to round that discussion out, the common application asks, most colleges ask, are you applying for need-based aid? So in a situation where you're going to show financial strength, I know these are loose terms and we're not giving you definitions here. One of the reasons is that there is no definition or bright line test between who gets financial aid and who doesn't. But putting that aside, that's a different presentation. You should absolutely, in that scenario, if you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, on the common application say, no, I'm not applying for need-based aid, but still file your Fafsa and CSS profile because of that strategy that'll show financial strength. That is something your guidance counselor will never tell you. In fact, most other college advisors don't even really think that way. But there's a handful of us who've done this year in, year out, and it seems to work most of the time. The worst case scenario is that it's neutral.
Okay, I believe I have covered just about what I was hoping to cover. And
there's a little bit more here. So Pearl, so there are different shelters in the financial aid formulas, which I want to talk about. There's also ways to get merit aid. There's actually more merit money out there than there is need-based aid. So need-based aid, just to tell you the difference, that is that's everything you get from filing these financial aid applications. They look at your income, look at your savings, now there's 70 something factors, and then they decide how much they're going to give. In the 90s, there was a shift from colleges giving mostly need-based to giving mostly merit aid, and that's done to bribe kids to come who class up their rankings and other institutional goals. So merit aid is the definition of that is basically anything that's not need-based. So if you are not going to qualify for need-based aid, you may or may not, your best bet is exploring other ways to get money. One of those is by applying to schools that are generous, which tend to be private colleges that have high sticker prices, but the average discount at a private college off tuition is like 58%. It's ridiculous. It's really, really high. That's average. So if you target those types of schools and you are your student is in good standing, meaning in the top 10 to 20% in terms of the GPA, test scores, if you're going to be submitting your test scores, then you have a much better shot at getting merit aid. And like I said, there's more of that out there. So those are my best tips for getting merit aid. It's pretty simple. Some schools don't give merit. Most schools do. If you have questions, lob them in. Let me ask you a question. Are you guys finding this helpful so far? If you are, say that in chat, because we have a few more things to go through as we zip along. I think we're doing okay on time, which is surprising to me. So if you find this helpful, let us know and keep lobbing in your questions. I see some clients here. I see Elite. Push the easy button, pay for Pearl. That sounds almost suggestive.
She didn't say I'm easy.
Well, easy button, Pearl,
I appreciate
pay for
that.
Pearl.
Thank you.
Okay.
I try.
She's not beyond making a joke like that either.
No.
Okay.
I know that too.
So, all right. So I want to talk about, all right, Christina, you are welcome. Thank you. Good. So we have a lot of business owners who are high income and they don't qualify for need-based aid. However, business owners have they have disadvantages and they have advantages in the financial aid formulas and beyond. So frequently, we're able to, not just us, but along with our own personal accountant, Rick, who's also works with a lot of our clients hand in hand, able to identify strategies to let people pay for college with pre-tax dollars. He calls those tax scholarships, and other ways to sort of unlock money or free up money from your own business that otherwise would just go to the IRS. There also are disadvantages, a lot of mistakes that business owners make on the financial aid applications. Frequently, on the question on the FAFSA about the value of your business owners will overvalue it. Most of them are worth zero. Again, that's a different presentation, but just remember, if you own a business and you're filling out a FAFSA and it asks you the value of your business, read the directions. It's likely to be zero. And I'm not putting you down. I'm not saying you're worthless and weak. For financial aid, though, you want to be destitute. So that's a big
But there's a rule in there that allows you to do that. We're not just saying because it's helpful.
Read the directions.
Right.
Yeah. And then there are outside scholarships, which are defined as money that doesn't come from the college endowments themselves, look, the big money comes from college endowments. That's that 58% tuition discount. But there are all sorts of outside scholarships that people hear about, left-handed, of Viking descent, or, one-eyed. But they are real and they do exist. We do not specialize in those, but Jean, our colleague who works with each of our clients for financial aid, Jean O'Toole, she has a team that doesn't really pertain to you. You want to look at your own background, your parents' work experience and status, ethnicity, volunteer stuff that you do, religious stuff. There's all sorts of criteria that you want to double check, and there's usually some sort of money out there. So you want to apply for scholarships that are that pertain to you specifically, but are not overly competitive. That's my best bet for you right there. All right, I see some questions. Dominica, thank you. What? Dominica, you can probably teach this at this point. We've been through this so much. She's probably having a cocktail and just relaxing.
Yeah.
Couldn't find anything on Netflix, so she's watching us.
I'm flattered.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the college list. So, Pearl, you alluded to this earlier. A lot of kids have lists that are unbalanced, meaning too many Ivy plus, near Ivy reach schools. And there's nothing wrong with shooting for the stars, but you have to also be realistic. You need to have a plan B or more, deeper into the alphabet. And you want to make sure you have plenty of schools that you are going to get into. Now, what we saw last year and also the year before, so for the last couple of years, it was number one, a huge influx in applications being submitted. I think compared to 2 years ago, submissions on the Common App are up 20%. It's ridiculous. And what that translates into, though, is uncertainty for colleges, whether they admit you if you're going to actually show up. And that's bad for the college. That ratio of admitted to matriculated students is called the yield. So a lot of kids did not get into what they figured were slam dunk safety schools. And if I had to pick, there's never one reason, but if I had to pick one reason why they didn't get in, it's usually because the college didn't believe that they were genuinely interested in going to that school, because the kid didn't show interest, didn't visit, which a lot of people didn't do because of COVID, didn't kiss up online, attend info sessions, things like that. You have to treat your safety schools like they're your first choice almost, at least to them. You have to fall in love with your safety schools, which is easier said than done because most kids turn their noses up at safety schools. Mm-hmm. But it's debatable at best whether going to a more prestigious school is actually going to be better for you in the rest of your life.
Yep.
Highly debatable.
Very debatable.
Yeah. And
depends where you're heading. Yeah.
And this is an Ivy League graduate right here.
Yep.
So that could be a whole other presentation also.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of generosity, I mentioned before, you want to apply to generous colleges, and you can look up average scholarships, average need-based awards on the College Board website, collegeboard.org. Those are general numbers. Specifically, you want to know if these schools are going to be generous to your child. So I mentioned this before. It's worth repeating. How does your kid stack up compared to the rest of the competitor applicants that they're competing with? If you're in the top 10 to 20%, and you're applying to a generous college, I would personally expect you to get a very nice award. But if you have to beg, borrow, and steal, and scratch and claw your way to get in to these colleges, chances are they're going to engage in what's called preferential packaging and not award money because they don't prefer you compared to the kids who are above you academically and in other areas, but primarily academically. Is that too harsh?
No.
Sometimes you say I'm too harsh.
Nope, you're not.
And other times you say I'm not.
Unless you don't want to hear the way it really is, folks.
So as you go into the fall for a class of 2023, and think about this if you have someone younger, it is not too late to demonstrate interest, to suck up to these schools, to act like you're really interested in going there. So get out there and visit, go to the info sessions, talk to the reps. There's a gazillion things you can do. Yeah. Or maybe less. Maybe,
half a zillion.
Yeah, maybe half a dozen. But just do them. Do 3 or 4. All right, let's talk about choosing a major. We get a lot of questions on this. Do I have to choose my major right now? What I can tell you is it's become obvious over the last couple of years that some majors make it harder to get into a school than others. And a lot of people don't talk about this, so I want to bring this up. The the software that we use, I don't know if you've played around with this feature, but the software that we use asks a question: are you applying for a major in computer science or engineering? Because those are harder to get in, because you're competing with kids who have, really smart kids. Even schools that are less competitive, the engineering kids and the computer science kids are usually super smart, near 800 on the math portion of the SAT and the equivalent on the ACT. So if that's what your kid knows that they want to do, that's great. If they're undecided, they could explore other things. I would say right now, don't apply it for engineering or computer science unless you are dead sure that that's what you want to go into. Because if you don't, then you could be, doing your college applications with one hand tied behind your back, in effect. Moving along. It's a great time to get a handle on these deadlines. So a lot of early decision deadlines are November 1, November 15th. Occasionally they're earlier, like North Carolina, I believe, is going to be October 15th. I haven't checked the Common App this year. The Common App just came out August 1st. So the deadlines are all posted there. You enter your college, you indicate whether you're applying regular decision or early action or early decision. We can talk about those. Or restricted early action, double top secret. Yeah. So there's all these different things. They all have specific definitions, a little bit beyond the scope and frankly too boring to really talk about.
But we just did.
We didn't go in. I could go a lot deeper. Do not challenge me in front of everyone. Don't pressure me either.
Said we weren't going to do this.
In front of everyone. So don't blow your deadlines. Just the same way you don't want to blow financial aid deadlines, although there may be a little bit of a grace period if you're off by 2 or 3 days. Not so with college applications.
Right.
You know why? Because there's not enough pressure on you already. They want to put more pressure on you. The other thing that I just did a video on this. I run this boot camp every summer for our rising seniors, and I did a video where I actually opened up a common application. I think only 2 people fell asleep, and I went through it. And one of the things I went through was, and you would appreciate this, is I picked a school, and right at the bottom on the home page for that school, it said, "This college does not have a writing supplement." And then I clicked on questions, and then the questions, it said, here are 4 short essays, pick one up to 300 words. And there was more. So take the time to get organized ahead of time, because what you want to avoid is if you have a November 1 deadline and you're doing it the last minute and it's October 31st and you're going to go out trick-or-treating even though you're 17 and that's really embarrassing, you shouldn't do that anymore. And then you're about to hit submit, and then you get the wait, like the red dot, you haven't completed everything, and then you go back and you realize you've got 4 300 to 400 word essays to write, even though it said this college does not have any writing supplements. I picked like 5 or 6 random colleges to do this with, and I think 3 or 4 of them had that exact scenario. There were no writing supplements. Then you go into questions, and then short answer, writing. So I'm
certainly picking up on a theme here. Early,
which you will find in the Common App, they're pretty much all in there now. If you click on the college and you find these supplemental essays, even if they're not called writing for some reason, cut and paste them all into one Google Doc, arrange them by deadline. And this way, you could say, all right, I've got 17 essays, but there's really only 13 original ones because I can reuse 4 of them. I've got 6 weeks left before school starts. So if I can write 2 a week, I'll get most of these done, right? So that's the type of mentality, I think, and planning approach I think you should have right now. All right, let's talk a little bit about your college night. And then we'll get into
already bashed that.
Yeah, well, I think they're helpful, but don't take everything at face value. A lot of times they talk parents out of applying for financial aid. They're like, no, you can fill it out, but you're not going to get anything. That's not always the case. It might be sometimes, but there's definitely not the case all the time. Pearl already mentioned that they do sort of a half-assed cursory description of the FAFSA, but they never talk about the CSS profile, which is twice as long and 10 times as hard as the FAFSA.
Yeah. And matters.
And matters more, probably, for a lot of the schools that, in our experience, that people on these webinars apply to. Yeah. And I've heard so much, incorrect things stated by people in the past. one of which is you can't, if you apply early decision, you can't get out of it. So I'm not going to belabor that, but if your child is applying early decision, which means for most people, if they admit you have to go. But in reality, number one, your kid can't sign a contract because they lack the age of majority to do that. So there's no contractual obligation. Number two, so far in this country, no one can force you to pay anything for college or a certain full price. And the third thing is in that non-binding, non-contractual early decision agreement, parents sign it and guidance counselors sign it. I don't know why, they're a party to it. It does say language to the effect of, if we admit you have to come, unless you find the financial aid offer to be inadequate. And there's no standard, there's no proof. You are sole judge and jury. Your guidance counselor will never tell you this. And that is mostly because they don't want to taint next year's crop of students applying to whatever school you backed out of.
Different agendas.
Right, not your agenda. That is their problem, it's not yours. So it's not even true either, because colleges allow this all the time. So it's just dumb. It's lore, L-O-R-E, not L-A-W, the way we said growing up in Boston. Lore. And the last thing is, and you can speak to this a lot, this is a roller coaster. You need to be prepared. There are ups, there are downs, they're going to happen. Don't give you say this all the time, don't give your power away to these colleges. Don't. Yeah.
And don't spend the year freaking out. There is enough stress and enough moving parts that your adage stressing out and making everything an 11 out of 10 isn't helpful. Isn't helpful for you, isn't advancing this process, is not helping your student, child. So understand there are like a lot of like seemingly gotcha emails, like you'll get an email that'll say, oh, it's time to file your financial aid forms now, 3 months after you submitted your FAFSA, because you did so at the time you submitted an application, and now all of a sudden they're talking to you about financial aid. Don't they have your forms? What happened? Well, I don't understand. Okay, this really happens all the time because a bot is emailing your student and saying these things and is simply responsive to an application for admission. So now it's just saying, hey, submit for financial aid forms too. It's not actually saying, we don't have your, but sometimes you might get an email that says that too. Okay, so my point is everything is check outable, verifiable. When we submit financial aid forms, I have a time and date stamped receipt, as does the student, because when we file, the student receives confirmation emails of everything that's done. So if something is missing at some point down the line, no problem, school that claims something's missing, we'll simply provide it with a time and a date stamp for you. And then you'll have to eat crow and say, oh, here it is.
Which
we
were
mistaken. But something to that effect happens, and all is well and good in the world again, and things go on, as they should. But the point is, occurrences like that happen. It's not an anomaly. This is the way it is. So don't freak out. Stay tethered to your surfboard. The year comes to an end. Your student's going to get in someplace. And if it's what they planned at the outset, or you end up on a plan different than what you thought in the outset, it's okay. Yield to the fact that it's bigger than you and that it shakes out as it should, and that there are many trajectories to greatness, not necessarily the one that you have in mind at the moment.
Yeah, so that's more about what I was alluding to when you say, it's a roller coaster and don't give your power away to these colleges. Like it's kind of silly, and it's I understand why it happens, because we're part of it, and it happens even in our own family. We have 4 kids, and our youngest is going through this process right now. And it's really easy for kids to fall in love with a certain school. But the fact is that it's usually done for emotional or arbitrary reasons that have nothing to do with outcomes, right? And what you're going to get out, what's the return on investment that you're going to get from this college, how it's going to help you prepare. There's no correlation between where you go and how successful you are. That's, that could be another topic.
Still lies within you.
Oh, yeah.
You bring yourself to school A or school B or school C.
It's more about what
you wish.
What your kid puts into it. Okay. And frankly, there are far more similarities than differences among almost every college that kids apply to. Certainly the top 50 colleges. So there's difference of location, temperature, climate, size, whatever. But a lot of it is similar in terms of the kids that you associate with. Certainly the classes that are taught, far more similarities than differences. So even if you don't get into your top choice school, the point is that might actually be a better thing, because you might be, if you're going to grad school, the lesser undergrad school that you got into might be actually easier to get a higher GPA in, and so much of grad school admission is predicated on your GPA. That might be a good thing, but it's not a bad thing. There's no correlation, again, between where you go is not who you are.
That's for sure.
That's really the bottom line.
And wherever you can be the bigger fish at whatever pond you can be in, you're going to be great. You're going to be showing your greatness.
Well,
remind your
kids.
Build
some confidence.
That's right.
Yeah.
Remind your kids they have this power and that they should never give it away.
So we're going to go to questions, but I just want to talk about potentially working with us, see if we're a good fit for you. That's how we think also. It's vice versa. It's a two-way street. If you're a good fit for us too. Normally, I don't do free consultations. For people on this webinar only, I'm doing them. I carved out, I think it's 12 or maybe by now it's less. You can just click on the, I think it's a green button, and that'll take you right to our calendar. You don't have to pay anything. And like I said, it's limited to, I think, 12 or fewer people, depending on when you're clicking. And there's no obligation, but all we ask is that you are actually reasonably interested in getting our help. This is not a 20-minute call where you can start firing questions away about your specific, I own 5 investment properties and one of them is in, blah, blah, blah. And it's not like that. It's really more about exploring what's the type of help you're looking for and whether we think we'd be a good fit for you, and whether your kid is coachable and going to benefit from this program so that you're not wasting money and we're not banging our heads against the wall. So that is the pitch. Nothing to buy, no obligation. All right. You want to read through some questions and either you answer them or tell me to answer them.
Sounds good.
Because you have better eyesight.
Okay.
And thank you for sticking around with us. There's plenty of other things to do, and you chose us, so that's great. We appreciate it.
We do, certainly. All right. Question from Merrill. Can we clarify what we mean when we say that retirement assets are not included in the FAFSA? Nothing, not an IRA, 401k? Merrill, good question. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for clarifying, because there is a nuance here. The total assets you have in retirement, the total you have in retirement assets should not be included on the FAFSA. It should be included on the CSS profile. However, your contributions to a 401k in the operative year, in the 2021 year, this is something that could be found on your pay stub, on your W-2. I believe it's sub 12 little a through little d shows your contribution to your retirement plan with pre-tax dollars, and that does get added back into your FAFSA for financial aid purposes. So while your contributions to a 401k are untaxed income to you for tax purposes, it does get added back and counted as income on the FAFSA. Contributions to your 401k in the operative tax year. Question from Susie V. So if I have a Roth IRA for your kids for money earned working for family, aka no W-2, will that income need to report it? Okay. If you have the IRA,
no.
I don't know what's being
Here's the question. IRA contributions are done with after-tax dollars.
Right.
So whatever you earned before you made this contribution is reportable.
Okay.
There's income and there's assets. IRAs are assets, they're not reported, but income is reported.
And I don't know if this is what you're asking, but if a student has an IRA, on the CSS profile, there is a place where you would indicate what retirement assets, if any, that the student may have. That's only on the CSS profile. Question from Pamela. What is the TAP form? I see some New York schools require it and others don't mention it. Okay. So if you live in New York State and your adjusted gross income is under $125,000, then you, on a sliding scale, could be eligible for a New York State grant, which is the TAP program.
Excelsior.
Well, no, that's different. That is different. That's different. TAP is can be awarded if you meet these income requirements at any New York school, any school located within the state of New York, if you qualify income-wise. It's on a sliding scale and it depends. The Excelsior Scholarship also requires that you have an income of less than $125,000 to qualify, is only makes you eligible for free tuition at a CUNY or a SUNY school. So it's not all New York schools. And there are some other prerequisites to this Excelsior Scholarship, including the amounts of, well, obviously as an incoming freshman, you would not have any prior college credits. But if you were trying, let's say you were transferring from one school to a SUNY or a CUNY midway, and you wanted to get free tuition, your income met that under 125, you'd have to have 30 credit hours in the preceding year in order to. So there are other requirements along with this, but nonetheless, you apply.
That is so deep.
Sorry. It tends to get a little detail-y.
You're a fountain of knowledge.
Christine, why does the FAFSA website say it's available now? That was what caught my eye before. It is because it's available for those still applying for the 22-23 school year. So don't apply now if you are looking for the 23-24 school year. That comes out October 1st.
People who graduate in June of 2023 enter college in the fall of 2023. That's the first semester, and the winter semester of 2024, the FAFSA is for 23-24, fall and winter.
Question from Susie. How much does the FAFSA form change from year to year? Can we look at it prior to October 1st to see what's on it? Yes, with caution, because every year there are some changes. There are a few new questions, and then there are a few deleted questions. So sure, you'll get the gist.
And there's big ones coming up.
Yeah, there are. We got some big ones. That is going to go into. I can't touch on it, but there are proposed very big affecting changes coming for the 24-25 school year. Yeah.
You can look them up, but they're not going to pertain to this fall.
Right.
Next fall.
Question from Janine. On the FAFSA, do I need to report the amount contributed to retirement accounts for the year? Yes. If it was done so with pre-tax dollars, yes. Question from Beverly. Will attendees get a recording of this webinar?
I don't think we did a recording, but if we did do one, then we will send it out. But I did not have my assistant set it up that way.
Question from Lisa. What scenario would you put for no need-based aid?
That's a case-by-case thing, but it really depends on, and you got to consider assets also, but income is the most important factor.
Depends on how many kids you have in school.
Yeah. And getting back to the assets and the whole sheltering thing, there are a handful of strategies that you mentioned. You started to mention them, I started to mention them, but we moved on. That sometimes by shifting money around from one bucket, so to speak, to another, you might be able to improve your eligibility for need-based aid. Number one, this does not work for most people. It's probably 20-25% of the families that we meet with. And number two, you got to be really careful about understanding all the potential negatives. It's not just about qualifying for aid. It's also about what are you giving up, what are the fees, all that type of stuff. So that's all I'm going to say about that in the interest of time.
Okay. Good question from Neely. How accurate are the cost estimate calendars, especially from private non-Ivy versus state schools?
So calculators, right?
Calculators, sorry.
Net price calculators are somewhat accurate, but they are not universal, and they are not meant to be 100% accurate because they ask for different bits of information. Some schools ask for more, some less. It's a starting point. Yeah. I wish I could say they were more accurate.
Yeah, be careful getting too attached to those numbers. Susie, if you target schools number one on your list, how eager should you be showing demonstrated interest? I heard that it would maybe reduce your financial aid offer, assuming eligible for merit only.
I don't think it's going to reduce merit aid, but if you apply early decision and you don't have any other offers to use as leverage to play off against them, whether that's a merit offer or a need-based offer, then I feel like you're at a disadvantage. But showing interest is fine. It's just that if you don't have other potential suitors to show them, then after you get the awards, then you may have gotten the highest and best offer initially. What are your thoughts on the optional how COVID impacted you question?
COVID was awful for so many. It did impact us, but I'm trying to gauge when it's appropriate to write about it. Good question.
Yeah. There's no bright line test with that one either, but they're looking for really severe stuff. So it's not like I couldn't do extracurricular activities, so I sat in my room and I was depressed.
Right.
Because frankly, a lot of people who applied to college during coronavirus and did do other stuff, even though some avenues were closed to them through the school. But if there was loss of income, if there's severe, health and dramatic type stuff, I would consider writing about it, but it's got to be pretty severe.
Okay, question from Stuart. How do we identify which SUNY schools give the best merit awards?
Well, most of them don't, but if you do get a merit award from a SUNY, it's usually like $3,500 or something, and it's usually the lesser, not Binghamton SUNYs. So they all report this. I would look at collegeboard.org as a starting point.
Okay, and I believe this could be our last question.
All right, last call.
From Lisa, if you report the 401k contributions, isn't that duplicating the income? No. In other words, you made that money on the W-2. Why double whammy by having to report it? Okay, let me clarify. Your wages on the W-2, which is in the number one item on the W-2 line, those are your wages, okay? And then on a different line on your W-2, are your reported contributions to your 401k plan. That's not a number that's included in your wages. It is an untaxed number. However, specifically for financial aid purposes, they have asked for that number from your W-2, even though it's just your contributions and has nothing to do with your reported wages. Those are just two different things coming from your W-2 that need to get reported. It's not a double dipping.
So, it's a clawback actually. So in other words, if you made $150,000, but you put 20 grand into your 401k, you're only going to show income of 130, but for financial aid purposes, they add back that 20 that you contributed. That's why they're asking that, which is, in my opinion, crappy, but those are the rules.
Yeah.
So they don't want you to benefit from lower taxes. That's the philosophy. They don't want you to lower your tax obligation and then also qualify for more aid. So you get the benefit of the tax deduction, but you can't double dip and also get the benefit of the financial aid eligibility. So they bump that back up to 150.
Right.
Yep. All right.
Okay. I think that's it. I hope it looks like we've answered everybody's questions.
You did both the chat and the Q&A?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll do one more little perusal.
Because sometimes there are people who have hurt feelings.
I don't want to hurt anybody.
She cuts like a knife.
No. I'm sorry. There were some in the chat that were here. Sorry. Sherry.
This is just what I was afraid of.
Sorry. How does a family account for drastically reduced income status? Good question. Loss of employment, etc. From the operative tax return to the current status? Great question. Okay, and that has been very typical in these last few years of lots of,
Can I take a stab at
significant
this one?
information. Sure.
Okay, so if your tax year, just to kind of come full circle here, if the tax year that they're looking at for financial aid for 2023 graduate is 21, that's ancient history if you lost a job in 22 or whatever. So since the first year. So how do you account for that? Well, if you're filing to a college that only takes the FAFSA, there's no place to do that. You do that after you get a financial aid award that doesn't account for that situation. And if you're applying to a school that requires the CSS profile, you get a little box to check off and write, 140 characters or something of an explanation. In our experience, that gets blown off, and you're still going to have to go back and appeal. The good news is that fits squarely in the definition of a special circumstance appeal. I probably wrote about 120 of those letters last year. I do that every year. And depending on the school, that's a legitimate non-eye rolling appeal, and you would probably pick up a few extra bucks if you were still out of work. Just to round out that discussion, sometimes people get their financial aid award and they had been laid off like 2 weeks before or something, and they want to tell the financial aid office. And their attitude is, well, we have to wait at least 6 to 8 weeks or 10 weeks or some longer period Because you may get a job. So they don't automatically, if it's very fresh, if the unemployment status is very fresh, they don't automatically redo your financial aid award.
Okay, got 2 more questions snuck in.
Penultimate last call.
Elizabeth, how do divorced families deal with the FAFSA? Well,
that's a Pearl question.
That's a me question. Okay, so as of right now, this is an area that is looking to be changed in the 24-25 year, but I'm going to tell you what the rule is now and what it's going to be for this upcoming year. Divorced families are treated the same as separated families, and no, when one is separated, it need not adhere to any formal separation agreement, whatever. If you're separated, you're separated. If you're divorced, you're divorced.
Who files?
And
who files?
The parent information that is to go on the FAFSA is the parent with whom the student resides with greater than 50% of the time.
What if that parent doesn't declare the child as dependent on their tax return?
Doesn't matter now.
Do you think that'll change?
A parent for financial aid purposes. That's the proposed change. That is not currently the rule. Currently, it is which parent does the student reside with greater than 50% of the time? That is the parent whose financial information goes on the FAFSA. Only that parent's information. And if that student is also applying to a school that requires the CSS profile, depending on which school, there may be just some information of the non-custodial parents that is required on that CSS profile, or one of those CSS profile requiring schools may require, because a subset of the CSS profile schools will require all of the non-custodial parents' financial information, like literally a mirror image of what you're submitting in a CSS profile for the non-custodial parent. So depending on the school will govern whether all that extra work is necessary.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Very well said.
Thanks.
And I bet you were expecting sort of a simple answer. This is one of the very.
I don't do simple. I'm sorry.
No, I wasn't going to say that. This is complicated stuff.
It's a lot.
Right? And this is why you're not going to hear this at a school financial aid night, or your accountant's not going to know this stuff, and they get this stuff wrong all the time. Yeah. And it's great. I feel that this is great on behalf of us, but I feel, I'm bragging about Pearl. I think this is great that you have an expert like this to be able to pick her brain and do all this stuff, because again, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
It is the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. There's even a lot more to it, but you have the general idea, which is what I want you to walk away with. Yeah.
So I see you struggling to edit yourself.
I am. I'm trying to keep it tight.
And you can't. There's just so much more. And she's been doing this forever, and it's I've forgotten probably you've probably forgotten more stuff than I've learned at this point. I don't keep track of this stuff. So nice job.
Thank you.
You're such a nerd.
Thank you. Matt. Well, our grand finale question will be from Matt.
That'll be a good one, Matt.
All right. How do we compare schools' reputations in a specific major, such as chemistry?
That is, there's no database that I'm aware of that does that. But I think what you need to do is to look at the outcomes for graduates in that major, in that field, for any major, chemistry in your example. And I think the best place to do that is to spend time with the Career Center, and also talk to the department head or someone high up in the chemistry department to get a feel for what happened with last year's grads. Where are they now? Who recruited on campus? Who's coming back next year? Who's not coming back next year? Which chemistry grads didn't do well at all? How do we avoid, how do we negatively model what they did? Things like that. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves and do your work. I have a few shortcuts for our clients, but I give my opinions. I tell them what the research is, but then I tell them to do just what I'm suggesting that you do. That was a good question, and you came through, Matt. You're a closer. That was great. All right, Pearl.
Shall we? We shall.
A little over an hour, but not bad.
Hope you guys found this helpful. I hope we cleared some cobwebs for you.
Or confusion.